So the things we're going to talk about are the Zechariah vision and the Cambridge vision, which is, if you will, a subchapter of the Zechariah vision, and what that is all about. We'll talk about the mission of the Zechariah vision. We'll talk about the motivation of the Zechariah vision, the history, so you'll kind of see where we're coming from, and future plans. And we're going to talk a little bit about what the Zechariah vision has to offer, but a lot of that depends on what local churches do with it. Now, I do have to say, this is no grandiose organization. This is what I would call a fledgling organization, which is why you've never heard of it, probably. But there has been definitely a need identified in Cambridge to reach out to people in care homes, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So what's the mission of the Zechariah vision? The first thing is to encourage and edify older Christians. I'm going to read these scriptures to you just so that we can get a flavor. They're not anything unfamiliar to you. Colossians 3:16, let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. 2 Timothy 4:2, it says, preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season, correct, rebuke, and encourage with great patience and careful instruction. And lastly, there's plenty of more, of course, in the Bible about actually edifying and encouraging, but these are my three favorites. But encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. These verses apply to everyone. I just heard about a man, he's going into a different care home right now. I happen to know where that one is, and I know that it's a large one. I don't think there's a church that does church services in there. There might be clergymen or clergy ladies who go in there and minister, but the church doesn't go there as far as I know. So this is something we're going to be looking into with the Cambridge vision. We want to deliver the gospel to others. Romans chapter 10 says, how then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Consequently, faith comes from hearing the message, and the message is heard through the word about Christ. So the Zechariah vision is about edifying and encouraging saints, those older Christians, and it's about sharing the gospel with those who don't know Christ yet. Lastly, the mission of the Zechariah vision is to meet other needs of people who are experiencing loss. And the reason I frame it that way, experiencing loss, is it's because experiencing loss is really the line at which we define being old for the Zechariah vision. I'll explain just a little bit more. I do support work in the community, and I am supporting a man who's 79 years old. This man has an illness that enables him to speak. He can barely walk because of this illness, and so he is having a difficult time maintaining independent living. My job is to help him keep that independent living. Why does he need my help? It's not because he's 79 years old. There are plenty of 79-year-old people I know that don't need people like me to help them. It's because of his illness, and because that illness has caused loss in his life. He has lost mobility. He has lost the ability to speak. He has lost his cognitive function to a degree, and he is losing social status because of all of this. The Zechariah vision wants to reach people who are experiencing loss like this, not because they're 79 or 80 or 85, but because of the loss they have experienced. That is one thing that is unique about the Zechariah vision. There are a lot of agencies and organizations out there who say, we minister to people over 55, or we minister to people over 65. We minister to OAP. But you see, it's more about what's happening to the person, not chronologically how old they are. That really doesn't matter. It just so happens that older people, by chance and through some degeneration, will start experiencing loss and the specific need for ministering, especially if they go into a care home. What is the motivation behind the Zechariah vision? The first thing that motivates us to execute the Zechariah vision, please pardon my word for the word executing. I'm a military guy. We execute things, not as in put people to death, but we execute missions. Anyway, so the thing that motivates us to do what we do is God's love for all. Genesis 1:27 makes it very plain that God created everyone in his own image. John chapter 3, verse 16. I don't think many of you have heard this verse before. I'm joking. But look at it. It says, God so loved the world. That includes everybody. Everybody who, regardless of their age, lives in this world. Okay? God so loved the world. If people are older, have experienced loss, may not look the same as they used to, God loves them. They're still God's image, right? Because it's not about that and what that can do. The second motivation, besides we're made in God's image, is the societal need for something like the Zechariah vision. Social inclusion is a huge problem, and a recent strategic review that I read said that is one of the things that people fear the most as they get older, and that is not being included. Social exclusion is a scary thing for anyone. Instead, though, society should be thinking about how we can not be excluding people, but respecting people as they get older, just like God designed it to be. In the book of Leviticus, he says, stand up in the presence of the aged, show respect for the elderly, and revere your God. I am the Lord. Proverbs 16:31, gray hair is a crown of splendor. It is attained in the way of righteousness. The glory of young men in their strength, the glory of young men is their strength. Gray hair, the splendor of the old. And then those passages in Timothy and Titus talk about the relationships between older people and younger people and how they're there to be encouraging one another. Younger people need to learn from those who have been here a little bit longer, don't we? I don't know where I am in this. I'm 47. You can decide. Lastly, our motivation for this. I put up there grandparents, parents, and us. What I'm getting at is we all have relatives, mostly, or friends, church family. Some of us are grandparents or great-grandparents. We care about them. We care about making sure that their spiritual needs are met. And parents, we can be thinking about our parents. My mother is getting to be the age where I might be concerned about her experiencing loss. And then us. Two ways of looking at this. You could be experiencing loss yourself right now. I know some here have already experienced the loss of hearing. That affects you greatly because of the need to communicate. And if we can communicate, our relationships are very difficult to maintain. And I don't like that at all. So if you're not experiencing loss, but yet you have an older person who does, this affects you anyway, I would hope, because you want to make sure their needs are being met. Now let's carry this a little bit further. What I'm hoping the Zechariah vision will do through the Cambridge vision is establish a network so that now that I know that there's a Derek out there about to go into, we can see if there is a church who is willing to send a team in there and bring church to him if he can't come out. I've worked in care homes for the last 8 years doing this very thing, and I'm telling you, most people, once they go in there, I don't know why yet, I hope to get to the bottom of it, they don't want to come out anymore, especially to go to church. Maybe it's because they don't feel like being a nuisance. Maybe it's because they just don't feel like going out. They don't feel well. Sometimes they just plain can't because they need to be close to where their care is. So the Zechariah vision wants to make sure that there are teams bringing church to them. That includes bringing hymns that they might like to sing. What we do at Cherry Hinton Care Home is we go and we bring music. We sing 5 hymns. We preach a little bit from the Word of God, and then we visit. Some of those people like the hymns. They remember them from school maybe, or church. They don't like it when we don't show up, and I'm not kidding. They really don't like it when we don't show up, so we have to go. And that's great, but there's not enough care homes with this happening in it, okay? So, the reason this is about us, our own aging process, everybody who does not experience a premature death, not many people want that to happen, but everybody who does not experience a premature death will grow old. And statistics tell us that men will experience 5 years of poor health before they die, and ladies will experience similar. So what that means is what? They're going to start experiencing loss. What's our response? We want to bring the church to them to help them face those losses, especially those spiritual needs that they have. That didn't make much sense. There's no need in the spiritual aspect. Anyway, you got the idea. So the Zechariah vision is ministry for all. One thing I don't like to see is a focus on older people. Some organizations who are focusing on aging issues are run by older people and administered by older people, because a lot of times if they're retired, they have time on their hands. They're perfect. We need them. But at the same time, it breaks my heart that younger people are feeding that age gap and creating that social exclusion that we don't want to see anymore. Okay? So this is a ministry that needs everybody to be involved and everybody to be thinking about this. And by the way, it's something we're all going to need eventually. When I get older, and if I live in a care home, I would sure hate to not have a church come and do this for me in the home I live in. Okay, so that's it. That's the Zechariah Vision's mission and the reason we do what we're doing, the motivation. Just a real quick history. I don't want to take too much of your time. What have we been up to? Well, when this started, it wasn't really the Zechariah Vision. It was a thing, and we had to decide what we were going to do. Defining the mission scope is what we've been doing. 2012 was the year for research. We were thinking nationwide, what are we going to do? I've got this website. I'm going to make everyone aware of all these aging issues, and I'm going to fix the world. Well, that's a little overambitious, especially with me. I'm not the most organized person. So I decided, well, let's see what the problem is. Let's see what is out there. What is the situation? And so I found that there are 239,100 residents living in supported shelters. That means a care home or sheltered accommodations where there's no nursing staff in England. 77% of them are over the age of 65. As we try to reel in the scope of our study, we see in Cambridge that there are a few more than 3,000 people living in over 100 homes in the Cambridge area. That includes Cambridge proper, the city, and surrounding villages. Don't worry about that. You can't see that very well. That's one of the two slides you won't be able to see, I hope anyway. And that is just simply telling you that to make this a manageable thing to address, we broke down who's living where. By the way, this did take research because there's not one source of information to find this out in. You have to go to different agencies to figure out where people are living. So it turns out that we have in the city exactly, within the city limits, there are 800 people living in care homes. And there are in those, that's in about 20 care homes in the city. In surrounding villages, there are about 700 more in immediate villages near Cambridge. And then between housings with support, those sheltered accommodations, and age-exclusive housing, there are another 1,500 people. So to really crystallize the focus, what I decided was we need to decide what the most urgent need is and the most practical need that can be addressed. Those two things were discovered this way. The city care homes are here, and we decided care homes specifically because those are people who, one, are probably experiencing the greatest amount of distress because of losses in their lives, and two, those are the people who are probably nearing death more quickly than others. So there's more of an urgent need to talk to them. So what that is, the corner, the darkest spot that you can't see is just telling you there are 800 people in city care homes. Okay, that's what that means. And it's dark because in my screen it's red, and it's saying that's the greatest and most urgent need. Hope that makes sense. So, what you have there that you can't see very well, but watch it closely, it's going to change in front of you. Everybody watching? This is a map of Cambridge. You could probably see that, I hope. And this is a plot of where all the care homes are. That's Cherry Hinton Care Home. That's 1 out of 20. I've got 19 to go. I won't go that slow. But this is Cherry Hinton, and this is where Rock Baptist started, which is where I go to church. We've been going to that care home, bringing the light of Christ for 8 years now. Okay? But there are more, and there's lots more work to be done. This is Cambridge Manor, which is in the north. That was Hinton Grange. We used to go into Hinton Grange, but we lost the team to do two different things, like one family went to China for missionary service and lots of different things, so the team had to stop. Look at those care homes. Do you see them all popping up? These are representing 800 lives that either need to be encouraged or need to find Christ. Grace Church, led by Pastor Graham Bynan, has sent a care home in the north. Can you see that glow there? That's the second care home. The Zechariah Vision was instrumental in setting that up. We helped them liaise with the team, the care home staff. And I just found out through research that we're doing this year that Cambridge Presbyterian is going into that care home at Russell Court. It's one of the biggest ones in Cambridge, so I'm glad that the gospel is being preached there. So that was last year. 2012 was the year of research, and meanwhile, what I've been doing besides finding out who's living where and what the needs are, I've been talking to Outlook Trusts. Has anybody heard of the Outlook Trust? We've got one over here, led until recently by a wonderful man by the name of Norman Critchell. And he gave me a lot of advice and gave me a lot of information and a lot of encouragement. And I also was talking to Parsh. Has anybody heard of that? Parch, it's a long acronym. I won't bore you with it. But this is an organization that is doing exactly what I want to do in Cambridge. We could actually call this the Zechariah Vision Cambridge Parsh, or Parsh Cambridge. They have dozens and dozens of churches going into dozens and dozens of care homes. And so the reason I bring this up is, one, she gave me a lot of advice. We don't want to work in a stovepipe, as we used to call it. But she's given me a lot of advice and encouragement and evidence to everyone that it can actually happen. I also stood up the website for the Zechariah Vision, and it looks something like that. Can't see it very well. If you go and look at the website, you'll see why there's a picture of a motorcycle there. It relates to a story that I wrote about a lady that meant a lot to us there at Cherry Hinton Care Home Care Home. So what's happening? 2013 is the year for network and more research. We know where the care homes are. We know how many people live there. Now we need to find out what churches are doing. And that's what we've been doing for the last few months. I talked to two other churches before I came here a few months ago. And then I was invited to come here. So I really appreciate that. We need to work a little bit more with Outlook Trust and Parsh. And this is the last thing I had to say. This is right now, actually, if you stop the clock and you said, what can the Zechariah Vision or the Cambridge Vision do for you, or for a church, or for a care home, this is what we would say. We've already done this. We can help encourage churches to help encourage their people to have a burden for this kind of thing. There's such an urgency in my mind because there are so many people who never have a brother or sister in Christ to come and bring the encouragement of the Word of God to them, and many people who have still yet to accept the gospel in their last years. We can help you build contacts with care homes. We have a good rapport with the care homes we work in and the care homes that Grace Church works in. And I'm sure that we could get them to say, yes, they're okay. It would be great if you took them in and let another team come and do this work. Care homes, by the way, do like us coming in there. You would think that they might be hostile to the gospel. Some might be. But for the most part, they just need activities because they have to demonstrate to the government that they're doing activities. So what are we? Just another activity. That's fine with me. Just let us go in. If the Zechariah Vision builds more and we start talking to each other to find out what we're doing, then encouragement and sharing success stories is something that we all need because it is hard work. Sharing resources and relevant news articles, talking to each other about what's happening in the world is very helpful. The last thing, though, I want to say, I should have put at the bottom, is training and seminars. We really feel like we are equipped to train other churches to do what we do. Grace Church came and they watched us do our work at the Cherry Hinton Care Home, and it worked fine. And so we can do that more. We can polish it more. Last June, Rock held a summer school, and I led a seminar on caring for aging relatives. And that was a real good look at bereavement and losses experienced by older people and how their children, their older children, can help cope with those. So that's really all. That's what the Zechariah Vision is about. And I've always put this up here. What does the Zechariah Vision mean? What is the Zechariah all about? Well, Zechariah, the word means God remembers. That's really enough, really. God remembers, because these are people I feel are very forgotten. It was inspired, though, by the term, the verse in Zechariah chapter 8, verse 4. It says, once again, this is talking about Christ coming back and living in Jerusalem in Zechariah. He says, once again, Men and women of ripe old age will sit in the streets of Jerusalem, each of them with cane in hand because of their age. The city streets will be filled with boys and girls playing there. So this scene, it's not the primary interpretation of the verse, but the scene is very specific, and the scene is very striking, because in this scene we have older people sitting right there in the streets, and then younger people playing. This is a scene that I hope is something more regular to us, because right now we have retirement homes popping up. This is what I call segregation in my mind, something the U.S. is trying to forget. Of course, it wasn't age-based segregation, it was about race, but it's just as bad in my mind. We want people to live together. God's design for society is for older people and younger people to live together. And that's why this verse is so important, and that's why the Zechariah Vision's name got what it got. So it was inspired by the Jubilee Center book that they wrote. So anyway, that's really all I have. And I really would like to take some questions if you have them. That's easier to me than actually talking about it. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. One more thing I want to say. If you had a hard time hearing what I said, I apologize, and I want you to tell me afterwards, and I will fill you in specifically with the information you missed, even if it means a one-on-one presentation of what we talked about. And I'm going to also say this again independently, because that person may not have heard what I said just now, so that would be bad. So anyway. And so does anybody have any questions?
Can I just understand, you were saying, and if you could repeat the question after I said it, just kind of understand, you're going into the home and you're having, well, you're singing hymns and having a talk. But is there a follow-up to that with individuals? Because you're getting people coming there, some who may be devout Christians, some who flirted with the Christian faith, some who know nothing about it at all. And they all have individual needs. How do you envisage that's dealt with, or how is it dealt with?
Right. I did gloss over that, but yes. I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Charles.
What Charles was asking is, when we go into care homes, what do we do besides singing the hymns and preaching out of the Bible? Do we address needs? Do we have a follow-up type thing? Yes. The relationships aspect is the most important thing that we have. Singing hymns is very encouraging for them, but if we're not trying to establish relationships with the people who come, then we are doing it for no reason. We're wasting our time. So after we're done, we break up and we go and visit with the residents. Now this is very difficult because you have a lot of people that you're talking to, and they can't hear very well, some of them. And then you have other people talking, and you have those people yelling in the ear of somebody who can't hear, so they can hear you, and now I can't hear because they're yelling at them, and it's horrible. So what we have to do is make sure we're trying to do one-on-one visits. So we try to go into the rooms if we can, at another time or after, depends on how long they hang around. So does that answer that question?
Yes.
Yeah. And I want to say about that, it is so difficult. I've been, the gentleman I was telling you about that I go and do support work for, I've been with him for several weeks now, spending 24 hours a week there, and we're just now starting to understand each other and be able to communicate. It takes a long time. We need patient people to work in this ministry. Very anti-21st century, with immediate gratification, not wanting to communicate, not wanting to share information except for over the information highway. Oh my goodness. Anyway, don't get me started. So yes, that's so important that communication needs to be established one-on-one, and that's what we really, really need to happen. And that's why we need so many people. If that part wasn't part of our ministry, we could go in with one or two people, go lead in some hymns, and go preach, and then we'd be done, and it'd be easy. But we need many more people than just that to do an effective ministry. That's why a lot of churches are afraid to start this, because they're afraid of the commitment. But once you go, there's this, I get it. And everybody who is experiencing this, well, I won't say that, that's not true. But a lot of people who experience the ministry really start thinking, yeah, I get it now. Grows the burden. I'm sorry. Any more questions?
Don't most churches already have an outreach show people? I mean, this church has been providing services at Cheston or Folkestone for at least 20 years. I mean, don't most churches actually do what you're doing?
Not that I've found. And what I will ask is, and I actually haven't touched base with St. Andrew the Great, because I knew I was coming here, and I was hoping to find out. So if St. Andrew, if I understand correctly, that you're saying that you go to a care home and do church services?
We don't go as part of St. Andrew the Great. It's an individual thing.
Right.
Those who go to my house.
So,
Church.
right. Now, if you remember, sorry. What 2013 is about is networking and more research. And so we haven't exactly figured out what churches are doing what. So I'm sorry, what Peter was asking was, are other churches doing this? Do we need this kind of thing? And you know what? We really don't know yet. It could be that there are churches everywhere doing this important thing, and the Zechariah vision isn't something that's really going to be too important. There's always going to be a place for it, because I think sharing information with each other is something that's going to be so important, and sharing resources to do this work, to help us all do it better, I think it's something that Zechariah vision can help with. But I don't want to brand the Zechariah vision, make it something that churches have to subscribe to, because they don't need to. Honestly, the Zechariah vision could go away. I don't care, as long as there are churches going to care homes and ministering to these people. And so that's really what this is about. And so yes, we need to find out more what churches are doing. However, the churches we have talked to, which is about half of the churches that we think preach the gospel so far, most of them do not go to care homes and have services. That's what we found so far. I have a list of churches that do. Out of all of the churches we've spoken to, only one, Cambridge Presbyterian, actually I haven't spoken with them yet, but while I was trying to speak to them, I saw on their website that they go to the care home. But the other churches we have spoken to, they do not go to care homes. They all say, oh, we do lunches for older people. We have events, sort of like this. And that's great. That needs to happen, absolutely. But actually going to care homes, no, that's not the case as we found so far. I haven't talked to Stag yet, and I'm glad, and I want to hear more about that when we're done, because that's going to go on my list. It's fantastic.
How many of you are there in this organisation in Cambridge?
What's PARSH?
PARSH is, it stands for Pastoral, I can't remember, something, evangelical something, I can't remember. But it's an organization, and what I didn't say, I'm sorry, it's an organization in Eastbourne, and in Eastbourne, the churches have formed this co-op, if you will, called PARSH, administered by one person who is monitoring the activities to make sure that all the care homes are being reached. Okay? And we can talk about that some more later if you need to.
Ross, I think what often does happen in Cambridge, in some churches, is that when somebody no longer can go to the services in the church and they move into a retirement home, some churches follow up those people and keep on visiting them. They're part of the church family.
Right.
So you might find that there are lots, that's happening in lots of different places, but I'm sure you're right, there are many places where there's nobody there.
Yes, absolutely. I'm almost positive that Sheila was just pointing out that many churches probably when an older person they have in their congregation goes to a care home, there is pastoral care provided for them. And that's probably true. And I would almost bet that every church is responsible enough to actually love that person that's gone to the care home. The only thing I will say, though, is having one person come, or maybe a visitor of another sort go, isn't enough, because imagine it for yourself. Don't you like to come to church and sing hymns and worship God? That's called corporate worship, right? Don't we need to do that together? Yeah, I think so. It's what's God's design for the church. So when they can't come anymore to do that, then I submit to you that we need to bring to them the church. Just a mini church. Can't bring everybody. But those people who are willing to sing hymns, do some collective worship to God, right? And then learn about the Word of God together. And I'm telling you, no pastor that we could ever talk to, no vicar or any minister would tell you that they have enough time to invest into each person that they have in their congregation. There's just not enough time. So we need to help them with that. So, yes, that's a good point. And it's encouraging to know how many church leaders there are and other just laymen and ladies who go and visit one-on-one. Any more questions?
Do you have any special way of getting the message across to people whose memories are going fast?
That would be something, I think. I think we would really be on the map if we had cracked that code. I will say this. We have learned a lot about that issue. And what's your name again, sir? Basil? What Basil was just asking is, have we learned how to present the gospel or reach those people who are losing their memory? Which is another one of those losses I was talking about, right? When people get older, they might experience. Well, not anything that I could wrap up in a few minutes, but what I do know is this. When we talk about meeting with someone who has dementia, and we do very much every week that we go, there are people who don't remember who we are from the last time we saw them. Short-term memory is not intact enough for them to remember who we are. But when we break out those hymn books that we have and we sing, their long-term memory kicks into gear and they're singing those words, and they've got those better memorized than I do. So there's that inner person there that's still getting reached and pulled out. The same is true, but it's not as easy to recognize for scripture reading, so that's helpful. The invisible part is what is happening to that person inside and spiritually. We can never tell, so we have to just leave that in God's hands, in His sovereignty, and hope that they're being comforted if that's what they need, or they're being reached with the gospel to believe if that's what they need. We have a resource. That's a lady, so I shouldn't say she's a resource. That sounds like she's a computer or something. But there's a lady that we have at our disposal, which sounds just as bad. That's on my foot. But no, she is a psychologist, or excuse me, a psychiatrist. I can't remember what kind of psychiatrist she is, who deals with dementia and older things. And she has been a great help in helping us understand those issues. And I think we really personally have gone as far as we can. But we also know that when we minister to people and we don't know what they're going to be able to understand or retain, we can still know that while we go in there, we can at least minister for them in the moment that they're living. Do you see what I mean by that? A person is there, they're living in that moment, that's all they have. So we can go and we could actually change their mood. We could do our service, sing those hymns, present the message, visit with them. We go away. A couple hours later, they've forgotten we were doing all of this. But what they do is feel good. And they feel good. I mean, they don't remember why, but so we've contributed to that day by, in that moment, reaching them where they are, where we can, and helping them to feel good about things. I say that with caution. Christianity isn't about feeling good, and I understand that. People need to maybe feel bad to be able to realize their need for Christ, right? But when I'm talking about these people and we don't know if they can understand the gospel, well then, yeah, we need to be very in tune with where they are, with their memory, short-term memory. Yeah. So that was a really long answer to a short question. I'm sorry. I hope it was helpful, though.
One more question, Ken?
Can you kindly just remind me, how long has this been established?
Right.
How the involvement of your involvement with Rock Baptist Church? The church has been able to take some within the church along with you in this meeting?
Yes. Ken was asking if how long I've been involved with Rock Baptist Church, and if I bring teams there to the care home, Cherry Hinton, and also how long has the Zechariah vision actually been a thing? And that's the easiest question to answer. It really isn't even yet. But it's something that we're just starting. That the research, I feel, that we started in 2012 was the beginning of what I would think is to be the Zechariah vision as we know it. The term has been around for probably 7 or 8 years. My dreams and visions have gone on for about that amount of time. Writing a newsletter for the church about our specific ministry is about that old. And that was at Rock. I've been at Rock since 2004, January, so that's going to be 10 years pretty soon. And we have a team. This team is marvelous. The same people for every fortnight have gone into the care home, bringing church to these people, and it's been marvelous. Just a small team of 5 right now. The team has fluctuated. It's been larger. It's been smaller. What I would like to do is one of 2 things. Have the team be a little larger and go to a different care home, so we're reaching 2 care homes, or have the team be a little larger and go every week instead of fortnightly, which is, the care homes actually asked us to do that. So that tells you about the rapport there, which is so essential and so surprising to us. So I hope that answered that question. Good. Yeah. So that's it. Yeah, it's good.
Right. Well, what can we say? I mean, that's so thought-provoking. You know, so ambitious, so thought-provoking. I think we're full of admiration for what you're doing.
Thanks.
And we just pray that God will work through it. And it's all about reaching people, isn't it?
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
we wish you every success.
Thanks.
And thank you very much for your talk. It was wonderful.